Years and years ago, my grandfather gave my mum a grapefruit tree that lived in our house for ages. Unfortunately, a couple of years after my grandpa died, the tree also died and it had to be cut down. I always knew that I wanted to make something out of the wood, so I held on to a piece from the trunk. Unfortunately, the tree wasn't very big, so I only had a small amount to work with. The first job was to find some usable timber. I peeled most of the bark off with a chisel. I then used a saw to cut off the protruding branches. I then used the planer to flatten one side. And the table saw to cut some slabs. The blade was a little small, but it only left a tiny amount, so I could just break the slab off. I cut the slab into pieces, and this is what I had to work with. I don't have a wood lathe, so I'll be using my metal lathe for this. I found that the easiest way to centre odd shapes is to use the tailstock to pin them where you want, and then loosely tighten the jaws. As you can see, for wood it does a half decent job. Here I'm turning down the end to accept a ferrule. A ferrule's there to stop the wood splitting, and in this case I've cut them out of the end of a piece of copper pipe. They're a light interference fit, and I just tap them on with a hammer. And tidy up the end on the lathe. Like I said, I don't have a wood lathe, so I've got to improvise. I run the top slide all the way to the back, spin the top side around so it's facing the other direction, and clamp a piece of bar stock on top of the top slide. And that's my improvised tool rest. The shape I'm going for is kind of like a toadstool. So the bit that I'm turning here is going to be concave. And that will blend nicely into a convex surface on the top. I then give this side a sand while it's still held conveniently in the lathe. You'll notice when I'm sanding near the chuck that I'm sanding at the bottom, So if my finger or the sandpaper does get caught, it'll just get flung out the back rather than actually getting caught in the chuck. Now I swap over from the 4 to the 3 jaw chuck. I mount the handles in flipped end for end with a piece of masking tape over the ferrule to stop the jaws marring it. And now I can turn the other side. Fuck! Alright, let's give that another go. It's a pretty precarious setup, so this time I'm going to be a lot more delicate. Here I'm using the coarse grit sandpaper to do the final shaping of the handle. With all the sharp corners removed, it's a little more stable in the chuck and I can apply a little more pressure. I then sand through the grits to make it nice and smooth. Some methylated spirits cleans off the sawdust. And some oil-based varnish to protect the handles. I put this on the copper as well, as it'll prevent it oxidizing. And I made this little drying rack by cutting a few slits in a piece of wood. While they dry, I turn my attention to the shanks. The shanks are made from various high-speed steel lathe blanks. The round one and this square one are just for thin and thick line work. This rounded one is for shallow cuts that are used for shading. is for cross-hatching, which is a different type of shading. This one that I'm bending is a dimpling tool, which is essentially for making little dots. Afterwards, they all need a tapered shank to attach to the handles. And then the faces get cleaned up on the whetstone. The drill bit needs to be the same size as about halfway up the shank. If you can see that dimple in the copper, this is the one we had the little accident with earlier. Here where I'm drilling it, you can see the really nice grip you get with this shaped handle. This is just a rubber mallet with an old cotton sock on it to protect the handles. Now, even though I'm holding the handle and hitting the handle, because the shank's heavier, it still gets driven into the hole. Once they're tapped in, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.